You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 93, Gillan. And coming to you from the suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John Leonidas Matola.
Leonidas, huh? Wow. I don't know about that one. Is it just are you feeling like I don't know? It's just like I thought you'd be like pick like an Italian king or something. Being the Italian man that you are.
Greek, close enough.
it's another peninsula that juts out into the Mediterranean. It's close.
Come on, that means son of the lion.
No, it's a very cool name.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, if anybody's met my dad in his heyday, consider him a lion.
He's got a pretty, back in the day, he had a pretty good head of hair on him. You could call it a mane.
He still does. It's all white now, but you know, it's still there.
I think it was white back then too. All right. Well, we are coming at you. We're coming at you fresh. We're hot. We're revved up. We're ready to go. We just had a great chat before the show. We're super excited to get into it, getting into some Gillan for the first time, which is exciting. But before we get into that, I want to remind you some ways you can support our show. First, you can become a patron on Patreon for as little as $1 measly a month. You know, that's only $12 a year, John. How much money do you spend on I don't know, drinks or candy or coffee? $12 a year. That's peanuts. If you're getting any value from the show, hey, become a patron on Patreon and join the Hall of Heroes that supports us on a weekly basis. We appreciate it.
Candy, $12 a trip.
Yeah, $12 a day.
$12 a day. Sometimes more if I make 2 trips.
That's true. Yeah. Why make 1 trip when you can make 2 for twice the price? You can also donate on PayPal. You can leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Another great way to help people discover the show. We really appreciate that. We're up to 51 ratings on Apple Podcasts, and I know there's a lot more than 51 people that listen to the show. So please, if you're in a safe place where you can do so, please write a review right now. Tell us how much you love the show. Should probably put that further into the show so the people that actually like it have stuck around long enough to hear it. Because they'll be like, I've been listening to this for 2 minutes. These people stink. 1 star.
Yeah, well, you know what? Even if you don't like us, write a review for the show. Be anonymous. We can't find you.
Yeah, even if you don't like us, leave us a 5-star review. You'll never have to hear from us again.
Just change the channel.
But as we always do, we want to thank all of our great patrons. At the $50 Soldier of Fortune tier, coming in is John Tremontinus. Thank you so much for your help. The $20 Shades of Deep Pockets tier, we have Ryan M. and Gerald Kelly. We have the $15 Highball Shooter tier. Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg. The Turn It Up to $11 tier, Frank Teelgard Mortensen, Clay Wambacher, and Mikkel Steen. At the $10 Someone Came tier, Steve Seaborg and Jeff Bryce. At the episode $6.66 tier, Richard Fusey. At the $5.99 Nice Price tier, we have Fielding Fowler. At the $5 Moneylender tier, Greg Sealby, John Convery, Arthur Smith, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Kenny Wymore, Jesper Alman, and Oleksiy, the Perfect Stranger Slipakov. Still haven't heard back if I'm getting that name right, but I'm feeling really comfortable about it. And if I'm mispronouncing it, then sorry about that. At the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, Peter Gardot, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Anton Glaving, Will Porter, and Andrew Meyer. And at the $1 made up name tier, Els Murders, Spacey Noodles, The Ungodly Leaky Mausoleum, Michael Vader, Stephen Somerville, the Concerto 1999 Fanatic, and Raf Calf, rounding out the $1 made up name tier. Thank you so much for all of your support. appreciate it. And of course, the Deep Dive podcast, we'd like to recognize Sabbath Bloody Podcast, Skinnerd Reconsidered, T-Bone's Prime Cuts, In the Lap of the Pods, and the Magicians Podcast. Oh, John, you got to say something so they can see you.
Oh, well, about a week ago, I got this nice present through the mail from our good friend Scott Haskin, the Magicians Podcast mug. And yeah, this is a great quality mug, beautiful logo. It's what I drink all my beverages out of when my Deep Purple Podcast mug is in the dishwasher.
Exactly, you have to have that rotation going on.
And then when this is in the dishwasher, I drink out of my Deep Purple Podcast mug, which I can't show you now because it's in the dishwasher.
Because of the aforementioned dishwasher. Well, I have my Uriah Heep podcast mug upstairs, so I'm drinking out of the Deep Purple. Well, when I move on to my tea later, I'll be drinking out of my Deep Purple mug.
There you go. Both of them represented. But yeah, this is a very, very similar style mug as ours. And yeah, I just love this logo. And thank you, Scott, for sending it to me. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, sorry, I just poured. There was a little bit of water in my mug apparently. I'm just cleaning up.
Whoops.
Yeah, you can if you want one of the mugs or one of these nice hoodies like I'm wearing, or a t-shirt, you can get them on our Etsy store. Check out our website for more details, deeppurplepodcast.com. So, speaking of Jeff Bryce, he has been kind enough to continue just sending us great material, just pictures from his amazing Deep Purple collection. Usually after having just listened to a recent episode, he'll send us what he's got. And this is something we discussed on our episode with Scott about Uriah Heep. And this is that album, the Trapeze album, Hold On, that we listened to, that had Peter Golby on vocals. But so he says, "Good morning, Nate. Just listened to your latest podcast and you played Hold On by Trapeze from their album of the same title. Well, if you lived in Germany back in the day, you could get that album with a different title, Running, and a more interesting cover. See? And buckle up, because here's the German version of the album."
Hi-yo!
So yeah, so the German cover. It's funny. It's always funny to me when they make the decision to like change the album title or the album cover, and this one is gonna earn, I don't know if this will be banned on YouTube, but there's lots of boobies on the cover, and
you can't get any further away from the other cover than this.
No, yeah, the other cover is just a car. It's like the back of it looks like a Volkswagen almost. But we did talk about how that handles on the windshield is that person being murdered? Are they having some fun in the back of that Volkswagen? What's going on?
But it's left to your imagination.
Yes. And then this one is just yeah, it's actually really cool. It's also funny because they have a completely different logo, which is actually kind of a cool logo. It says Trapeze, is kind of like a what do you call it, like a parallelogram or something, a trapezoid. They changed the name of the album, which is really weird, to Running, and it's actually cool. It's like, well, it's a completely naked woman, but she's like turning and then like looks like she's running away, but it's like the exposures from each step of the way, it's like the same woman just kind of looking and then turning and then running away.
The cover, it's not like a sensual pose or anything sexualized about it. It's more like somebody caught her without her clothes on and she's like, oh
yeah, somebody had the camera on the tripod and just started to get a bunch of exposures, and they put them all together.
It's like, wait, I need to get my robe, I'm not dressed yet. Like, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it is actually funny. Yeah, like you said, it isn't sensual. It's actually a really kind of cool album cover. Not just for the obvious reason. And I'm sure this probably sold a lot more copies than the back of a Volkswagen album cover, And interesting enough, he's got a copy of Martin Popoff's "Sensitive to Light" in the background there, you can see.
Oh, there it is.
Yep. So most people wouldn't notice that looking at this album cover. So, so thank you, Jeff. I love that he's got just his collection continues to just astonish me. He's a really super nice guy and constantly writes in with, like I said, if we mention something or if he hears something on an older episode, he'll shoot me an email with some pictures and a little text about his collection. So really cool. Really appreciate that. It's really fun to see. I'm starting to think now I should probably reach out to him before we do an episode to say like, hey, what do you got on this album? So we can get the information to show during that episode.
We'll do it for the next one.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, I'll reach out to him. Yeah, we kind of gave away what this episode was gonna. Well, I gave away what this episode was gonna be foolishly in the last episode. But
Boo.
next episode, you won't get out of me what's next week's gonna be. Oh no, and it's a good one. So, so if you're,
I don't know what that face was.
I wasn't looking the first time you did it, but
oh no, I kind of caught myself in the camera, and I'm like, oh, I kind of crossed my eyes and looked like somebody punched me in the nards.
You look kind of like a face like Don Rickles would make during.
I'm kind of like Don Rickles, insulting everybody, miserable all the time.
You're a little bit lower key than Don Rickles.
Just getting all the zingers in, you know.
Strangely though, I think when you were younger, you were more like Don Rickles. As you've gotten older, you've mellowed. You were more of a crabby old man when you were younger.
I've lost my edge.
Not as edgy. All right, so yeah, today we're here to talk about Gillan, or as you may know it, the Japanese album. I have my copy, my CD. Well, you probably see the album behind me, the LP, but
your mic screen is blocking it.
Oh, is it? Let me see if I can move it a little bit. There we go. Can you see?
There we go. We can see it a little better. There it is.
There we go. Okay, not good enough. You know what it looks like. But this is the copy I bought in Boston at HMV. I remember finding this.
Wow.
And back this one's called the Japanese album. So as we'll get to in a little bit, it was released only in Japan, and it was called Gillan. And then it kind of got the name as the Japanese album because it was an album you could only get in Japan, and you could get it through importers in the UK. So when we last left off Ian Gillan, he was in the Ian Gillan band, and we covered not too long ago their last album, Scarabus, and kind of discovered that the band had kind of run its course. The Island, the album that they were working for, they felt that they had a certain image in mind for Ian Gillan band, just wasn't working. So Gillan got very upset, and he ended up like just leaving the studio. They had gone to the studio to record a few more tracks. It just wasn't working out. So Colin Towns sat down and tried to write some songs that would showcase Gillan as a vocalist and make him better than he was viewing himself at the time. So Colin Towns says, I'm going to write something which shows Ian from one extreme to the other. Shows he's a good singer as well as a good screamer and all the things in between. So when Gillan returned to the studio, Towns showed him a song he'd been demoing, and Gillan really liked it. And we'll get to that song, obviously, on the album later. The two decided they needed to make some changes. So Ian Gillan kept on Colin Towns and dissolved the rest of the band. Towns says, the following day, he rang around the members of the band and said it was over. He said, we're not going to get any more of the band out of the band, which is true. It's a shame. If Clear Air had been more successful, it would have been good. But on the other hand, it wasn't any good for Ian. There was too much music for it to be the Ian Gillan band. So the drummer, Liam Janaki, who I think I'm pronouncing his name right, was the first to be recruited. He joined the band with Richard Brampton on guitar, and Janaki gave Towns a list of suggestions, including John McCoy for bass. John McCoy's bandmate Steve Bird was brought in to replace Brampton pretty early on. And then Towns was kind of the primary songwriter, most of the album's material, and Gillan obviously wrote vocals and some additional music as well. They played the Reading Festival in August of 1978, and they were still billed as the Ian Gillan band, but it was this new lineup that we're going to see. And the band had kind of a no frills policy. So they were trying to make a conscious decision to be, like we saw on Scarabus, they were making that move towards more rock. And this was kind of that conscious decision to say, we're going to really move towards more rock and get rid of the jazz elements. And they changed the name just to Gillan instead of Ian Gillan Band. The album was released in October of 1978 in Japan only, and it would be later released in Australia and New Zealand, but never saw a UK release until the 1993 CD release that I'm holding right here. So this is the first time it was ever released, and I would have bought it shortly after that when it instead of buying it in the UK as an import from Japan, I bought it in the US as an import from the UK when this one came out, back when that was a little harder to do and harder to find.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great. And if you're familiar with any of the other releases that Simon Robinson's been involved in, they always do a great job. If you like Share Kazoo and Mask and all them, they got this great little fold out booklet, some really great pictures, some actually really cool pictures. A picture of Gillan kind of on the side, and then there's some really funny pictures of Gillan with his shirt off, just like flexing, which is really cool. And those aren't on the LP at all, but it's a really cool CD release. And of course, like any CD release, they jam it full of like additional bonus tracks and stuff, but we're only going to get to the proper original release today as normal. So on bass, we have the British bass guitarist John McCoy, who when we get to the album art in a little bit, you'll see probably if you think about Ian Gillan band, probably before you even think of Ian Gillan, you think of John McCoy, the shaved head and the goatee, and just like probably one of the most badass looking guys you've ever seen in any rock band ever.
Oh yeah.
Like even, I don't know, like on par with like Lemmy or just any, like who else would kind of be in that category, do you think?
There's not a lot of people that have that look.
I mean, like Rob Halford almost, because he's got that kind of like gruff, like.
Well, now, like current Rob Halford.
Back then, he would have been more kind of just like, wearing a leather hat or whatever.
yeah, but really punk looking, really kind of almost dangerous looking,
like scary. Like you wouldn't want to, if you ran into probably the nicest guy in the world.
Mess with them, yeah.
I've had brief little interactions with him on Facebook, just like saying hi and stuff. Seems like a super nice guy, and I'm sure he is. I've seen like interviews with him on documentaries. Seems like a super nice guy, but just looks like a guy. Kind of reminds me of my my good friend Ron Howard, who I was in a band with. Not that Ron Howard, but we were in a band together for years, and he was, like the lead singer. We were a metal band, pretty heavy, and he was just like, if you saw him all tatted up with the sheet, he would just look like the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. Super friendly, but like if you saw him, you'd just be like, I'm not messing with that guy. I mean, I still wouldn't mess with him, even as he was a, I think he did MMA fighting and stuff too. But sometimes those tough looking guys end up being the nicest guys, even though they can still kick your ass.
Absolutely, they could, but they won't.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thankfully, he was one of those guys. Like, I'm glad Ron's on my side.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, John McCoy is just, he's like that, got that iconic look, and you can always tell the early Gillan or any era Gillan band pictures, he's the guy that stands out as just kind of this badass looking guy. He had some aliases, John Wren McDonald and Styx Hoi Polloi, which I think is a good one. I love Styx Hoi Polloi. He played with Muldoon, with Clive Muldoon and Dave Curtis, and which was previously known as Muldoon Curtis, and but they changed their name to I guess they've changed their name to Muldoon because Curtis wasn't happy with their album, just left and was like, take my name off that album. So it's pretty cool. He also played in a band called Zebra with 2 Z's. Liam Janaki on drums. He's an Irish drummer who played also in Zebra. That's how McCoy knew him, or how Janaki knew McCoy. He would later go on to play with Muldoon and in McCoy's self-titled band McCoy. On drums, we got Pete Barnacle. He would go on to play with Yngwie. I don't want to get in trouble with you and Rich this time for mispronouncing Yngwie. God forbid.
Attaboy.
I didn't know you and Rich were such Yngwie apologists.
Well, I mean, say the guy's name right.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I don't want to defile the guitar god's name, Yngwie. And then he also had a band called Barnacle with his brothers and his father. Barnacle. It's a good name.
Nice.
Colin Towns, of course, who we know from Ian Gillan Band. And guitar, we've got Steve Bird, another Zebra alum. And he went on to play with, believe it or not, Samantha Fox,
wow,
Billy Ocean, McCoy, and McCoy as well. So really interesting stuff there. I wonder if he played on Naughty Girls Need Love. We'll have to look that up. To think that's in like the Deep Purple, like two steps related, 2 steps away from Deep Purple. Samantha Fox. And then, of course, on vocals, you know who is on vocals. All right, let's talk about this album art because it's pretty interesting. I could not find a good copy of this anywhere, so I actually just took a picture of it with my phone and then photoshopped it so that it was you could actually see it. And I photoshopped out my reflection reflecting off of Ian Gillan's head. But this is the Japanese release, so it's just like it's got that kind of cool. It's like a picture of Ian Gillan looking up, just screaming like an absolute, just looks like an absolute maniac. And then it's like the top corner is like ripped off, like the paper's ripped, and behind it is like blueprint graph paper. It just says Gillan, and then of the Japanese version or the Japanese album version, it would, for some reason, they lose the blueprint and then write the Japanese album on there. What do you think of this album cover?
It's kind of weird.
And is that Ian Gillan? I mean, I just assume it is, right? But
yeah. I mean, it's weird because you look at it and you think like, okay, like what's the iconic thing about Ian Gillan? His vocals, like like if he screams, if he sings in the high register. So when I see that, I think of him like in the middle of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But the look on his face, it's like a look of horror, like he's stuck in a well, and like, you know, Buffalo Bill is up there telling him, put the load in the fucking basket.
Stuck in a well.
Or like whatever he threw him in Buffalo Bill's basement, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that you look at it, when you think it's the Japanese album, it's like I could picture like, you know, maybe they had this idea of like, oh, you know, we should like edit in like, you know, like a serpent coming out of his mouth or something like really weird like that. Or just it's a really odd looking album. Like on one hand, I get it. It kind of goes with it because it makes me think of him doing like his iconic high vocals, but at the same time, the look on his face is like this sheer panic, which like makes me think like, okay, this is kind of odd. So yeah, it's kind of it's an interesting album cover. I think it makes you think. Not one of my favorites, but you know, definitely thought provoking. What about you?
It looks to me more like horror. It looks like just like insanity, like he's going insane, like he's losing his mind, like he's having like a psychotic break, more so than being afraid, or like or maybe stepping on a Lego. I don't know.
You're a father, you know. If you made that face when you've stepped on a Lego, a Tinker toy, Matchbox car.
Well, my son is actually building a Lego set upstairs on the floor, but surprisingly, it's usually something else I'm stepping on, not so much Legos. That's kind of the cliche. But yeah, it's a very interesting album cover. Very, very basic, very stark, just black and white basically. And just Ian Gillan losing his mind, screaming, being terrified, stepping on a Lego, whatever, however you want to interpret it. But I like that idea. Like I hadn't really thought about the screaming aspect. Like that's what he's known for, and just him screaming. But it's just funny because when you think of the other, I don't have any of them handy, but like any of the other Gillan album covers or Ian Gillan solo, it's usually him. Like, you know, his phase where he had like the feathers, and or the phase where he's just like he's standing by the ocean and just kind of like more like going for like a glamour shot type thing. This is not that at all.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty, like you said, it's basic. It's Gillan, says Gillan, and it's showing you what you're getting, Gillan. And maybe this is the kind of a reintroduction to the heavier music that we're going to find within, instead of the, you know, the bumblebee looking album cover from Clear Air Turbulence, or the, you know, the weird doll from the Ian Gillan band inside the, you know, the geometric shapes, and, you know, the other album covers, you know.
Yeah.
Like maybe this is more back to basics. Who knows?
And when you open this up in the Japanese version, you've got the gatefold here, which is pretty cool. Got some great pictures of Gillan.
Nice.
You've got the Liam Janoki on drums over there. You've got the aforementioned badass John McCoy on the top left. You've got, and introducing Pete Barnacle. So it's interesting. They have both drummers on there, but I don't know if Barnacle's on the album. I guess maybe they're both. I think they might trade off on songs. I'm not sure which one's which, but then on the other side of the gatefold, well, actually, you can go this way. There's a close up of all the pictures, and on the other side of the gatefold, you've got the lyrics. And interesting, it has before each track, like you can see here, there's almost like a little short poem before each one. So, like on this song, it says, "I can look you straight in the eyes and tell you what's good for you, and because I know everything, you'd better believe I'm right, sucker." And then it goes into the or maybe that's the beginning line of the word, big beginning line of the song. I don't know. I guess we'll see. And then the back cover is just Ian Gillan and Colin Towns. Ian Gillan's like brandishing some sort of knife that's reflecting the light. And then you can see here that every song was written by Gillan and Towns except for Second Sight and Fighting Man, which were written by Towns alone. So. And that's it for the album art, which was done by Maki Yamaguchi and Masa Ito. Do you know Masa Ito?
I do not.
I don't know why I know Masa Ito, because when I found he's like, well, basically he's a Japanese like heavy metal journalist. But I don't know why I know him, because I heard Masa Ito's like, oh my God, Masa Ito did the liner notes in this. But I have no idea why I know that name. I probably just heard it batted around before, but
not off the top of my head anyway.
Yeah, but if you look him up on on Discogs, oh my God, I mean, he's got 1,200 1,300 entries. Yeah, so done lots of liner notes, like for re-releases and articles and books and all sorts of stuff. So definitely still very active, so pretty cool. All right, and then the producer was Ian Gillan and Paul, also known as Chaz Watkins. Chaz did production for Spirit, Bernie Torme, Straps with Mick Underwood, and then Ian Gillan Band before that. And then Ian Gillan and Colin Towns also worked on the production and the arrangement. So there you have it. That's all the news that's fit to print. And I must ask you, as I always do, John, are you ready to get into some of these tracks here?
Sure, why not? Well, it wouldn't be an answer for me if it wasn't extremely underwhelming. Yeah, I guess. I mean, we could get into some tracks, I suppose.
Let's do it, I guess. All right. So, do I have this right here? Oh God, is this one of the ones where all the track orders all messed up?
And just so you know, I can't enter in my ratings.
You can't?
Because I'm still read only. Oh no, wait a minute.
That should be fixed.
Oh, wait a minute. Holy cow. All right. Nope. Okay.
Well, good, because I'm having technical difficulties because I can't figure out why this. Did they change the name of this first song on the release that I have? Because I ripped a copy off of my
Okay.
So it's calling the first song on this Street Theater on the CD. Is that what it's called here? Yeah, Street Theater 1.
Well, I also only have up to Roger Glover Mask in my notebook, in my sheet.
You do? Are you doing the one that says Master?
I don't know. I'm opening up the same one that I always have.
All right, well, let's figure this out. Give me 1 second. All right, so forgive us. There was a little bit of technical difficulties there. Bathroom break, figuring things out, all that sort of stuff. But here's the thing that I just discovered that you probably listening to this already knew. So apparently the CD release has a different opening track than the vinyl release. So we're going to, in a first ever on the Deep Purple podcast, we're going to play you some vinyl. We're going to drop the needle on some wax for you and play the first track on this album. The vinyl release, original release, starts with a track called Second Sight, and the CD release for whatever reason, starts with a track called Street Theater. Both of them are instrumentals by seemingly only Cullen Towns. So not sure. It'd be interesting to see why that was. Maybe it's in the liner notes here and I just missed it. But it would be interesting to know why that decision was made. And perhaps while we're reading, while we're doing this, I'll read and see if we can figure out why that change made. But anyway, here we are. I've got a vinyl about ready to play for the first time ever on the Deep Purple podcast. And this is the opening track on the record, Second Sight. And it starts with a little bit of a slow start here. Kind of a slow build as Cullen Towns brings you into the Gillan era. Sounds almost like Nightmare on Elm Street.
It sounds like a horror soundtrack.
Yeah, it does, right?
All right, I spoke too soon.
And then it goes back to this.
Maybe I didn't.
So if you know more than us about this, which you probably do, let us know. Why did they change this opening track? Raking the piano strings and everything. Now this sounds like Ian Gillan band all of a sudden. It's just funny to hear this and be like, oh, I want to get this hard rock direction. Let's open the album like this. Show we're serious about hard rock. I mean, I like
Maybe
it.
That's why they changed it.
Yeah, but what they changed it to is pretty similar. It's another like instrumental like this. It sounds like, knowing this album, it sounds almost like more like they're trying to trick you. The way that ends, it sounds like it could be straight out of Clear Turbulence.
Sure.
But do you want to hear what's on the CD version, or should we skip over that? Or
I don't know. What do you want to do?
I don't know. It's a pretty. I mean, it's another quick. Well, let's do a side by side, just to show what the. Keep that in your mind for rating purposes. And now this is the opening on the CD version called Street Theater. Again, a slow build up, a little less spooky when it finally kicks in. It's almost the exact same length too. Kind of more like almost like a droning siren, and it kind of reminds me of the Crucifixion.
Yeah.
Which is not a good thing. Especially to open an album.
Yeah, I know. But it's got that same kind of dissonant, like, you're watching a horror movie type of thing.
Yeah. Kind of like this part. I think it's kind of cool. And this is the one I'm familiar with. They're both just about 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And it's interesting because Colin Towns would go on to have a career in doing film and movie soundtracks, and you can kind of get that impression from this.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he's ever done any horror movies. Gong there to end it off.
Yeah, he's had to have.
Now, is this the same as the other song, the Second Sight song? Because this is what I kind of think of when I think of the opening to this album. And then you hear these like footsteps. Kind of like stepping off into the distance. Whereas the other track ends like it ends with music right up to that last second and then goes into the first song. So I don't know. What do you, it's kind of an interesting opening. How do you want to rank that one?
Well, between the two of them, I kind of like the second one better. This was the CD one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a little more I don't know, fitting to it. Like, I mean, if they changed it, if there was a reason for changing it, I liked it better.
I don't know why they changed it. I think I liked the second half of the second one, which would be Street Theater. So I liked the second half of Street Theater, but I feel like I liked the beginning part of Street Theater I didn't like as much, and then the Second Sight, which is on the original one we listened to off of the vinyl, I feel like I liked that overall a little bit more. But what would you give that as a score?
So what, the first?
Yeah, I think I like the first one a little bit better overall, but I like the second half of the second one better. It's a little confusing.
I think I give them both a 3, but I would give the one that we just heard now like a stronger 3.
Like a 3.1.
Maybe.
Yeah, I give it a 3. But
anyway, I like it slightly better than the first track.
Sorry for the confusion around that one. I was kind of surprised when I looked at the CD I wrote and I was like, that I ripped. I was like, wait a second, these are different. This is a different track title. Sometimes they rearrange the track order, which drives me crazy, and this kind of drives me crazy too. Like, why replace a sort of kind of, I don't want to say generic, but kind of just, why do you replace this basic kind of lead-in instrumental with a different lead-in instrumental that's not terribly different as far as creating a mood?
Right.
Just interesting. But the one thing I will say is that first one off of the vinyl, the lead up to when it kicks in with the next song it hits you a little harder than this one, which kind of trails off with the footsteps leading into the second song. And the second song really kicks your ass. So without further ado, I should play that. So second song up, Secret of the Dance. Need a little more volume.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is what I'm talking about.
Right.
And just like the breakneck pace, great Gillan vocals.
It sounds like it could be off of like off of Fireball or something. It really sounds like he's going back for what really made him, really put him on the scene. But this chorus kind of sounds a little more Gillan bandy.
Yeah, but he doesn't linger on it, go anywhere weird with it.
Right, it's not gonna go to like a 6-minute like weird instrumental.
The drums of this in this are insane.
That's just so driving. Going a little more for that organ tone rather than Colin Conti's intending to be a little bit more into the synths and things like that. Damn.
Yeah.
That's pretty kick-ass.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
It makes you wonder why they didn't open the album with that. On one hand, I think it's almost too much to open the album with, because you don't get a second to. I kind of do like that slow little instrumental build up, and then, like I said, think about that instrumental going, which we didn't play it all together as one, but it's going and going and going, and then boom, it just kicks right into that with really not even a split second difference on the vinyl version. Then the CD version is right. It does have that little gap with the footsteps, and then it goes into this. So it's an interesting transition. Either way. No, what would you give The Secret of the Dance? Oh, what was that?
When reaching for my phone to give the ratings, and the secret of my hands.
The secret of the hands.
There was no secret, they just didn't work.
Yeah, they didn't work.
So yeah, Secret of the Dance gets a big old 5 for me.
Oh, damn.
I mean, you know how well, come on. I mean, it's just like, listen to this song. I mean, it's like everything that I want in a song. And like you said, it kicks your ass. What did you call there was a song that or maybe a couple of songs you called in other episodes a real barn burner.
It is a barn. You're right about that.
You know, I mean, this is like one you just like crank up the friggin' volume and like, you know, take no prisoners. This is not the Ian Gillan band from the past. There's no left turns or elaborate passages or like unusual keyboard or synth sounds. It's just like straight ahead rock and roll. Like you said, it was probably like, you know, him going back to like what he wrote in the early days, like, you know, something from Fireball, really driving, or like in rock, type of songs. And I mean, I really noticed the drums in this, and it's like, just great guitar and like keyboard solos, great vocals from Gillan, like just classic all the way around, like really heavy, like sets the tone.
Oh, for sure. And it does make you wonder though, why would they, with either of these instrumentals, why would you start it off with an instrumental that's kind of reminiscent of Ian Gillan band when you're trying to shed that image, and not just start off with this? Just, it almost reminded me of like the beginning of like Rust in Peace or something, where it doesn't let you breathe for a second. It just starts off kicking your ass, and it kicks your ass the entire album. Yeah, I think I'll give this one a 4.5. I really liked it. I mean, it's a strong opener, and it's very short, less than 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 51 seconds. gets the point across.
Yeah, no, refreshing. Yeah. You know, maybe they did the keyboard intro or that intro song to kind of just like lead you into this false sense of security before they.
I like that idea, but I wonder, like, from a marketing standpoint, is that a why? I guess it was a different time when, you know, you had the album, you bought it home. You're not going to just, you know, it's not like Spotify. You're not just because I don't like the synthesizer crap and go on to the next thing. So maybe people will give it more of a chance. But nowadays it seems like if you're trying to shed that image, why would you start them off on that foot or mislead them? But maybe it was kind of a cheeky sort of, we're going to play with them a little bit here and then show them that we're going to really get heavy. So yeah, it's great opener. The next track up we have is I'm Your Man, and it starts off with this little text in the lyrics here. It says, I can look you straight in the eyes and tell you what's good for you, and because I know everything, you'd better believe I'm right, sucker. So there you go. And I didn't read the one for this last one, but it was too long. So so here go with the next track up, which is I'm Your Man.
Feeling danger, said the spider to the fly. You're needing you a ranger with a smile in his eye. I'm your man, I'll make you plans for you. I am your man, I'll do what I can for me, oops, for you.
That little riff really reminds me of something that I can't put my finger on.
I feel like this could be like an Ozzy era Sabbath song, this verse.
Oh, yeah. Or even Ozzy solo.
Well, because Ozzy did that kind of like dual vocal, like the you know, the low singing over with the high singing, like, you know, double tracking his vocals like that in the early Sabbath, especially on like Sabotage, which would be around this era.
For some reason, this song really sticks out for me as thinking of this album, and it's been a while since I listened to this album. It's gonna drive me absolutely insane what this one is reminding me of.
If you're panting with a stranger or a preacher on the run, never do a tango. Better stick to rock and roll, whichever way you can go. You wanna fix your soul.
Nice dry drum sound. Maybe the song is just reminding me of this song.
Maybe.
Like it just sounds like, for some reason this one always stands out to me on his album, but. It's weird. It doesn't even have that money, money, money thing in the lyrics. It's weird. It's about taxes and I'm a taker and danger and money, money, money. Kind of a weird song.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely more of a Ian Gillan band song. Has more elements of it than, than Gillan, the band, or at least what they were trying to be anyways. Like it's definitely has a dark tone to it. But then the keyboard solo is very Ian Gillan band sounding. The production was very that way too. Mm-hmm. And the song was very, the tempo was much more like, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like the first song was just like all over the place. It's just like, let's rock, this one was much more, how come I can't think of the word?
It's like a dirge almost.
Intentional. That's it. Much more intentional. Like, I mean, you heard like the drums, they were very like, slow and like, measured out. And like, it was, you know what I mean? It was really, and then the money, money chant at the end, was very just kind of weird, like typical Gillan. Yeah, just some kind of like oddball thing that he would do. This seems like a lot more of like a Ian Gillan band song.
Yeah. What will you rank
So,
I'm Your Man?
I'll give it a 3. It was definitely interesting. I like the verses a lot. Like I said, it reminded me like, and his vocals, like his double track and the vocals really were like very Ozzy-esque, I guess you could say. Very cool. But probably one that I wouldn't, I'd listen to the first one, like I'd just put it on repeat. The first track. This one, not so much.
Well, I will give it a 4. I liked the riff. It's kind of I don't know why this song kind of sticks out to me, and it sounds like it's reminding me of something else. But maybe I'll think of it once again at like 2 a.m. But I can't think. I think it is just reminding me of this album that I haven't heard in a long time. But good stuff. All right, next track up, we've got a song called Dead of Night, and this one starts with "No one need fear to be dead, only the stroke of death chills our future." There's these little weird things before the track. So here we go, Dead of Night.
Oh, I like that.
John McCoy just laying it down. Oh, they throw you off beat there.
As we went to the door,
Quite a
I
strong
was
bell.
asking for more, so she reached out and turned off the lights.
I really like how upfront the bass is in the mix. I'm not gonna lie.
Reminds me of like Believer.
Yeah.
Like he calls this woman's dad a lecherous lout.
Typical Gillan.
He talks about making love to this guy's daughter on the front lawn, and the daddy was like, I'm all fine with that. Love that organ.
Ooh. This is another one. It's like a really kind of measured pace, but this one is like heavier.
Yeah.
You know, it's got more of a melody that I could like hang on to than the last song. I really love the drummer on this album, though. He's just like, he's throwing in all these crazy fills all the time.
It's incredible. I getting like a Blizzard of Oz vibe from this album so far. Like, and not just Blizzard of Oz. I mean the kind of Blizzard of Oz as in the original like band Blizzard of Oz, meaning the first two Ozzy albums. Which I never really associate Gillan with Ozzy at all, but.
Well, I mean, I think too, like the, you know, you said that the bass reminds you of Believer. I think like Gillan also has like the same kind of like what do you call it? Like delay or flange effect that Ozzy has on his voice, the doubling effect.
Yep.
Which is really similar. It's a cool effect. I really love it when vocalists use it.
Interesting to have a piano solo.
Yeah, piano solo.
But it worked really well. Very
kind of like the
piano
version of Speed King. For some reason it works.
Yeah, right. And he's talking about meeting the girl's dad and then having sex with her on the lawn and the dad thinking it's okay. And then it goes to this part where they find a whale in a canal. It's just a very odd song. I usually don't pay too much attention to lyrics, but I have them open right in front of me, so it's hard to not notice.
You know, you're right. The more that I kind of listened or paid attention when you said like you were getting a really like kind of Ozzy vibe from this song, like first couple of solo albums, I could definitely hear it.
Which is interesting because there's really no unifying force between those two at all.
Yeah, I mean the
Bernie Torme's not even around yet. And he wasn't even linked to that directly. So
yeah, I mean musicians, producers, you know, anything like I mean, like if you be like, oh, Bob Daisley was in this, then you could be like, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. If Bob Daisley was co-writing the songs, you'd say sure, but
I think it was just a lot of the same elements. You know, it just happened that, you know, he used some of the same elements that, you know, he did really well on that album. But I mean, obviously it speaks to the both of us because, you know, this was another one that I really like too. So
yep. So what do you rank this one?
So Dead of Night, I give a 4.5. I really like it. Like I said, I really love how the drum fills are just kind of all over the place. You know, it's really interesting. I love how the bass is up front in the mix. Gillan's vocals are just really good. You know, he's so strong. I like it when he's doing stuff like this.
We've talked about it before in the album. I feel like the early 80s were Gillan was at his peak, which is funny to say because he was, I mean, not that he was ever not at his peak before that, but I feel like when we talked about when we had watched years ago, like the live footage of him performing the Born Again tour with Sabbath, like I feel like that was his best live performance that I've ever seen. As far as just how good his vocals were, he wasn't doing anything super crazy, but just how solid he was. Again, not that he was ever lacking in any way, but I just felt like he was so in command of his voice in the early 80s.
Well, I think that's what happens is like the more you get into, you're being a musician, then you get stronger if the more that you practice or do shows or just kind of get into your craft. You know, it kind of reminds me of like Paul Stanley's voice. You know, in the early 70s, he was good, but he was raw. By the time he got to the 80s and the early 90s, he was like vocally at his peak, because he was like, yeah, he was getting older, but he was like in that sweet spot where he'd done it long enough, and he was just like, you know, he took his voice to other places. Like, it was like really, really strong. Like, if you look at him from like, you know, say like 87 to like 77, he was like an immensely better vocalist in 87. You could say the same for Gillan, you know, in terms of like, you know, technically, you know, like you said, having command of his voice or having command of his instrument, you know, as you know, being young and not knowing how to use it, as opposed to like, you know, picking up tricks along the way and getting stronger from, you know, doing it so much, you know, like building up that, you know, like building your muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, here he's definitely, you know, definitely good. Definitely really good.
I'm this is off topic, but since you brought up Paul Stanley, when was I'll Still Love You?
82.
Okay. I feel like that was, to me, I mean, don't know much about Kiss, but I just feel like that was a great Paul Stanley performance, that song.
Well, that's what, yeah. I mean, that's like one of his best vocals ever. You know, I mean, when you were like around the early 80s to like the mid to late, I mean, he just kept getting better, you know. And I mean, the notes that he was hitting, you know, kept getting higher and higher. And I mean, you know, Gillan was already hitting those, and he could still do it for like a long time. You know, but the only thing that maybe this song was lacking a little bit, which is why I gave it a 4.5, was it would have been cool if the guitar was a little heavier or a little maybe more up front in the mix. So
it's interesting because you're seeing a hard rock band where the keyboardist is the primary songwriter, and that's not super common, especially in that era or any era where the keyboardist is really calling the shots. So it might have been some of that in the production, bringing himself up more in the mix. But yeah, I will give this one a 4 as well as the one before it. I really like it. It's a strong song, and I echo everything that you said. I think it's really interesting to throw a piano solo in a song like that, because it worked really well. It starts off, and I like that the way that I mean, it's the oldest trick in the book, right? To start off and you think you're on the downbeat, and then the drums come in and you find out you're on the upbeat, and but it's always fun. There's a reason people keep doing it, right? It throws you off. It's kind of interesting. So
yeah, it's cool.
All right. The next track up is a track called Fighting Man. This is the song that we talked about earlier, which Colin Towns did the demo for it, while Gillan was off kind of feeling bummed about where Ian Gillan Band was going. So he wrote this demo, recorded it, and then Gillan, to focus on Gillan's vocals. And this one, if I can find it here, starts off with this. It says, "It is sometimes easier to write about that which you will never become, but is nevertheless not alien." Not sure why they put all these little weird lead-ins in the liner notes, but like we talked about before, that's one of the cool things about liner notes. They do fun little things like that sometimes. So here we go. The track is called Fighting Man. It's the last track on the first side of the album.
There's a man living on the kind of street that makes you wonder. Got a face that tells the life of city thunder. Here's the man.
Well, sounds like Turn the Page.
I was just gonna say that.
It's kind of reminding me of that.
But I mean, it's good though.
Oh, it's great. And how, for as amazing as a vocalist as Ian Gillan is, you don't often hear him singing with just one instrument accompaniment. Very rare that you hear that.
He's a bad mistake, got no heart to hate, Got a mind that can. He's a fighter's fighting man.
I just keep hearing the next line of Turn the Page coming in my head.
The sax.
Temptation, no one dares to question. Gives you promises if you
Well, I like the other layer that was added in here.
I love stuff like this so much. It's like what the hell's the Northwind song by Coverdale?
I was just gonna say that.
Why am I drawing
Time
a
and
blank?
again.
Time and Again, which is like one of my all-time favorite Coverdale songs. It's like This Time Around, Glenn Hughes. A lot of the tracks on Wizards Convention kind of have this feel to it, and I just always love it.
He's a bad mistake. Got no heart to hate. Got a mind that can. He's a fighter's fighting man.
All right, I gotta stop.
You need to do a mashup.
All right, this is where the similarities end.
Yes, exactly.
Had to get in one more before that.
And a nice little ascending line by the bass.
A little bit of a Child in Time there.
Yeah, and having that build is not something we've seen Gillan do a lot. Deep Purple didn't really do this a ton. I mean, they do it with Child in Time, but we've seen it with Rainbow, we've seen it with Whitesnake, we've seen it with all these bands, but
And then kind of going along with what we're talking about, how it kind of reminded us of a Coverdale song. This it feels like it's building in the kind of the song structure of like a Blind Man.
yep.
Which I mean, this is all good stuff, all great comparisons.
Yeah, these are good things to be in our circle anyway. These are good things to be compared to.
And even though like the keyboard sound he's using is still very Ian Gillan band, it doesn't feel like an Ian Gillan band song.
No, because they're not going into like a weird Bollywood dance number or whatever. And handing it over to the guitar here is great. It's interesting to have the interplay and that bounce back between organ and guitar solos, yet it's not at all derivative of Deep Purple in any way.
I really like Steve Bird. He's just a really solid guitar player. I don't know if he did anything else or if he was like well known anywhere else. I mean, I don't recognize his name from anything, but he's just like his playing. I like his tone.
Arms of steel. He's got hands that kill. Got a mind that can. He's a fighter's
Well, like we talked about, Matt the Fox.
He's a bad mistake. Got no heart to hate. A mind that can. He's a fighter's fighting man.
I'm just a sucker for a song like this. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. I mean, this really feels like he's trying to get back to his roots.
Yep.
I mean, this is definitely like echoing what he did in Child in Time, which he did not do a lot.
Why is Liam Janaki not better known? His drumming is incredible on this album. And just so you know, Stephen Bird did play guitar in Naughty Girls.
You looked that up.
I did.
That's great.
It's almost 8-minute song. I got plenty of time to look it up. He's at least credited for that album, so I don't know if he's played on that specific song, but and funny enough, it's a Colin Towns, like I said, wrote this by himself without Gillan, but that's Fighting Man.
Wow. Well, Gillan definitely put his stamp all over it.
Oh yeah, that's the kind of thing
that
you if I'm sure Colin Towns is a totally capable singer, would have sung a demo track of the vocals, but you hand it to somebody like Gillan and they're going to make it completely their own. Like, it reminds me of when we would record and I'd write my like a vocal line and it would all be very like bah, 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 it would all stay along, and then I'd give it to our friend Dan and he would sing it and it would just be like, whoa, totally not what I had come up, like he'd follow the basic melody line, but he'd throw in all these little flourishes and it just completely make it his own. And it was just like, wow, it was really interesting to see that. And then I could never think of it any other way afterwards, even though my very vanilla like kind of melody line was basically followed. But very interesting. I mean, a very gifted singer to see that happen. All right, if I can find the spreadsheet here, what do you give Fighting Man?
I'll give Fighting Man a Fighting 4.
Fighting 4. The Fighting Fours.
1, 2. I'll give him a 1, 2, and then a hook 4. Yeah, I really like the song. Not enough to give it a 5. I don't know why, because it's like it's good. It's got a really lot of great elements in it. It's a good song. It's got a lot of familiar elements. Maybe that's why. Is it like we were just picking a lot of like I guess you could say derivative elements from other songs that we like or that we've heard. I don't know if this pre or post dates them, but that's not really the point. I mean, it's good. A little long, although it didn't feel long. Good performances. Just something, I guess, in it like maybe it's just one of those things, I can't put my finger on it, but it lacked a little bit for me to give it like a full 5, kind of like Blind Men, it was just like, wow. Or Time and Again is like an emotional ballad, like, wow. This didn't have the same wow factor, but still really great song, or I wouldn't have given it 4.
Well, I'm a little on the fence on this one. I'm going to give it a 4.5. I think it's very close, so close to being in that Blindman territory. And it's, I mean, it is in that territory. It's just there, like you said, there's that certain something about it that's, you can't really put your finger on it. Not that a 4.5 or a 4 are at all bad ratings. It's an amazing song. I love it. There's just something about it that doesn't kick it into that next level. Like that's like, to me, a 5 is it's one of my favorite songs. And it just doesn't quite get there, but it is a phenomenal song. So, all right, let's flip this album over. The next track up, first track on the second side, is called Message in a Bottle. Both sounds very Deep Purple and very Gillan at the same time. Drinking can have a harmful effect on your health, particularly in the Middle East. A friend told me not to yield to temptation. I said somebody had to, or the whole thing becomes absurd. That's what it says in the lyric.
You know, this is another one really, really bass forward.
Yep.
But I mean, the bass is really full, so I don't mind it.
I love when he goes. He says, "One bottle a day of Scotland's finest," and he screams. Nice shout out to Chicago in the lyrics too. And has the line, "Take me to a brewery and leave me there to die."
Nice. Whoa.
Ripping into it.
Yeah.
Much like the first side, they're opening the second side with a bang. So driving.
Jeez. Is
Does
that
he have
double
a triple
bass?
bass drum? Does he have 3 legs? Wow.
Damn.
Damn, son.
I said, damn. Damn.
Wow.
Whew.
Message
Whew.
in a bottle.
Wow.
A little different
That's,
than different than the police version.
I'll say,
All right, what are you giving message in a bottle?
I'm gonna throw it a 4.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of things about that. I am enjoying the production.
Mhm.
You know, I love a good bass right up in your schnozola, you know. You know, nice full bass and everything. You know, Gillan's vocals, great. I love the effects. I love the doubling effect that he's using throughout the album on his vocals. And you can tell he's really dynamic and engaged too. Like, you know, in some of the past Gillan albums, you know, I was saying like, oh, he sounds like he's kind of like not all there. Like, it sounds like he's really into his performances on this.
Mm-hmm.
It almost like, it sounds like, I kind of like the song structure, the verses, because it sounds like that, even though, you know, predates it by like 10 years, you know, Still of the Night choruses.
Yeah,
but really,
yep.
but
It
really
kinda
sped
did have
up, which
that-
I mean,
That Still of the Night or Zeppelin sort of riff.
exactly.
vocal sort of
Like
thing
if
going
you,
on.
right, like if you know, you think of it as like, you know, let's say it's, you know, it's a Zeppelin, you know, type of influence or whatever, but it doesn't sound like it's trying to be that. It's just like when you hear that kind of like that tempo or whatever, it's the same thing, but he does something a little different with it.
Mhm.
You know, you can't, I like that because you can't quite put your finger on it until you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like that Zeppelin-y kind of thing, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like a copy or a ripoff or something. He's doing it in his own style. And I mean, even that, it goes into like, you know, the rest of the verse, you know, totally different. Another hard driving song, you know, the beat, the drums are crazy. I think the production, again, is what stops me from giving it more, because I would like to see more guitar, heavier guitar.
Mm-hmm.
That's what would probably take away from my rating. Is it's just personal preference. You know, I like, you know, a lot of heavy guitar in the mix. But that being said, you know, nothing wrong with that at all. With the way the song is, and the songs are good too. They're also well written. I think that's another thing too. They're not taking a lot of weird Ian Gillan band twists and turns and everything. They're all really straightforward, good songs.
Yep. I'm a big fan of Ian Gillan band twists and turns. I will also give this a 4. I might be leaning a little more forward on my 4. Maybe you're leaning a little more backward, but I like it. I think it's a good heavy opener. You know, a nice short, quick in and out song in just a little over 3 minutes. Very reminiscent of The Secret of the Dance. It's a good way to start the second.
Yeah, that's another thing too. The songs are short.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the songs are shorter too. That's, you know, another thing.
Yeah, and I feel like on some of the Ian Gillan band tracks, they're a little long and they go all over the place, and I love it. And some of them they're a little long and they go all over the place, and it's maybe a little bit too much. But I of course have a soft spot
Right.
for that lineup or that band. But if this song is not weird enough for you, the next song should be. It's called Not Weird Enough. And the little weird intro, speaking of weird, to the song in the lyrics sheet is, it isn't weird to be weird, because the word weird isn't weird if you say it enough, and being weird is getting less weird all the time. These must have been written by Ian Gillan. It's got his kind of it's got his dirty fingerprints all over it. All right, here we go. Not Weird Enough. Piano rocker here.
Sitting on your shoulder, but who do they put upon you? Quickly getting older, the voodoo is working on you. Commenting those offenses, destroying senses, really isn't weird enough. Erasing all your features, defacing little creatures, isn't weird enough.
It's weird. The lyric sheet seems to.
The sign on the woman makes you know you could easily go wrong.
The lyric sheet is different.
Cry from the wild man who sings to you 10 cents a song. Time a little job of handling it loud isn't weird enough. Eating mental towers, sitting still for hours really isn't weird enough.
Look on your face. I think this is weird
Yeah,
enough for John.
Yeah, some interesting choices.
The screaming of a woman getting raped in the dead of night. Like the sound of an animal, you know she's screaming with delight. Coming close to fences,
Weird, problematic lyric. But
isn't weird enough.
the lyrics to this song, apart from the ones we just heard, which are a little weird, not in a good way, You remind me of the song "You Make Me" by Weird Al. He's just like talking about weird stuff happening.
Yeah.
You know that one off of Even Works?
Oh, it's been a long time. I'm sure if you put it on, I would remember it immediately.
Weird guitar effect. I don't know if it's like a fifth effect or if he's just playing double tracking it. Or... That's a. Is that song weird enough for you, John?
Yep.
It reminds, but it's kind of
Just
like
enough.
the lyrics for this are tunneling to Java, paddling in lava really isn't weird enough. Eating metal towers, sitting still for hours really isn't weird enough. But it just makes me think of the Weird Al song. It's like, you make me want to buy a Slurpee at the mall. You make me watch the Gong Show. It's like kind of, it's very similar.
I remember.
I wonder if Weird Al was a Gillan fan.
Uh,
You make me want to hide a weasel in my shorts. You know, make me want to phone home. All this like kind of weird things being thrown in there. So it just kind of reminds me of that. Although this is more of a piano rocker, and that one's kind of like a weird industrial sounding song almost. But what do you think of Weird Enough? Or not weird enough, I should say.
I have to think about it for a second. Yeah, I was thinking about it while we were listening to it, of course. I really like the verse. I like how he doubled his vocals again. And then, like you said, it was a piano rocker. Like that made it really heavy because I think he was playing like the dun 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 dun. That was like the low part of the piano, which I always thought was heavy. But the keyboard solo threw me off.
Yeah,
like a lot.
Kind of weird. It was one of the typical, like one of those Cullen Towns weird piano patches or weird synth patches.
Yeah, I'll give it a 3.5. Because that and like then it was a really unusual guitar outro solo, which was good, but kind of experimental, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it wasn't a straightforward solo. It was a little odd and that weird, like I don't know if he was doing a second track like a fifth up or if he had the fifth kind of doubler effect on or whatever, or it didn't sound quite like an octave or anything, but it was strange.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, I know what I'm getting into when I'm listening to an Ian Gillan solo album.
Right.
I'm not expecting the usual choices, but that doesn't stop me from liking what I like. So
yeah, I will give this one a 3. I think to me it seemed like kind of a filler track. Like let's write a weird song about being weird, And don't get me wrong, Ian Gillan is good at writing those kind of like weird little interludes. The weird part about the like woman getting raped, not really my cup of tea. It's kind of weird lyrics going on there. Kind of shocking.
I must have missed that one.
Yeah, it's a good thing. The screaming of a woman getting raped in the dead of the night. No thanks, Ian Gillan. But anyway, that was not weird enough. I don't know. Could have been more weird, less weird, whatever it is. Wasn't my favorite. So all right. Well, the next track up is the third track on the second side, and this track is called Bringing Joanna Back.
I got some news to give you the blues. Remember Joanna who played the piano? I was her man.
Joanna played the piano. Such an Ian Gillan line.
Meets in the town.
And he has on Whoosh, he has something about the piano, right? The songs he mentions the piano.
Tonight it was alright. This old town is too small. The school hall is too small. And now to the school hall they're bringing Joanna back. Back on the country track. They're bringing Joanna back. Everyone's wearing black.
I mean, so far when they talk about like the Gillan screaming and everything, I don't hear a ton of it on this album. You know, like I feel like Clear Turbulence highlighted his screaming a lot more than this.
No, he uses it to good effect on this album.
Yeah, I mean, this showcases his normal kind of Gillan meat and potatoes kind of singing, but we haven't heard a ton of him really flexing his vocals.
She was alright, looking for the bright lights, stars lights, her lights.
I kind of like the almost call and response between the vocals and the bass. He's like, da da, boom, boom. He's kind of like answering him. Kind of a cool effect.
Bringing Joanna back. Everyone's wearing black.
This. Oh, here we go. I was gonna say this is the part in the Ian Gillan band where they go into like an extended 3-minute instrumental section. We're probably just gonna get a quick synth solo here.
Alright, she'd say alright, alright, it was alright. This old town's too small, the school hall is too small. Now to the school hall they're bringing Joanna back. Back on the country track. They're bringing Joanna back. Everyone's wearing black. They're bringing Joanna back. They're bringing Joanna back. Everyone's wearing black. They're bringing Joanna back.
They've got some great grooves on this album. John McCoy has the look of a guy that's just like, he's just in the band because like we need like we need like an internal bouncer or something, you know. But he's such a good bass player. He's got such a good feel, and he like lays down that really driving rhythm, but also throws in some really tasty fills. Just really good stuff. Like I've just
he's good, no doubt.
I've seen enough bands where the bass players just like they're like, this guy's hanging around with us anyway. Let's teach him how to play some root notes, and he can be our bass player. But he's not that guy. All right, what are you bringing back to Joanna for a score?
3.
All right.
I feel like it had a good groove to it, but I just feel like this one felt like a filler song. Yeah, I don't have much comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm finding a lot of typos in the lyrics sheet. Several typos. Before this song, it says, "You get rich and move on, you're poor again. You get rich and move on, always the same. Got to keep getting richer. Pretty soon you're dead." Really don't understand what all these little intros are supposed to mean, but at one point, I think they misspelled Joanna in here. It's a very interesting song. But I will give this one a 3.5. I really like the bass, the driving bass part of it's really, really good. So the next song is called Abbey of Thelema. I guess I'm pronouncing that correctly. Maybe. And this one, it says, "To Leah, we wish you were here." That's it. So he wasn't getting all poetic on this one. Don't know who Leah is, but here we go. Abbey of Thelema. It sounds like it could be like a rainbow song with a name like that, but here we go.
She opened her eyes with a look of surprise, then she started to cry. She remembered the dream.
There's a bunch more stuff here that I actually missed. It's all about Cairo and Egypt and Egyptian gods and pharaohs. I didn't know the Egyptians were well known for their abbeys.
Going to another place, running in another race. She tried to do what she would. That was the law she understood. I was on another plane. She was out alone again. Scarlet women ride the beast. Leah will enjoy the feast. She will enjoy the feast. She will enjoy the feast. Leah will enjoy the feast.
This is a strange song,
Yeah,
arrangement wise.
I wasn't expecting that. Yeah,
Abbey of Thelema, I was thinking
When
was
it
kind of
picked up.
If she follows the law, then she can show open.
yeah. I don't really know if I like the melody, the vocal melody here. It just sounds kind of like no, 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 no. You know, it's just kind of basic. You know, I feel like he could have done something else. Like it's yeah, it sounds really basic to me. I feel like Gillan could have tried more.
And this sounds like a completely different song, you know? It's really kind of throwing you back and forth between these two very different tempos, different feels. I wonder what Scarlet Women Ride the Beast means. Actually, I don't. I wonder who Leah is. We got about a minute left, but I'm really wondering at this point why the song is this long. It's this weird back and forth between two very different segments that don't really work together, as far as I'm concerned. I feel like either section could be paired up with a different section to make it make more sense. You could almost take these two parts, pair them over separate parts, and have two different songs. It says in the liner notes here, Shaitan appears in Cairo in the form of Iwas to dictate the book of law, the law of Thelema. Do what thou will shalt be. The whole of the law, the aeon of Horus, the crown of conquering child had begun. The Abbey of Thelema in Cephalu was a magical place. This weird invoking of like Egyptian imagery and stuff. He just likes scarab. That's like Scarabus.
I guess.
I guess.
I guess. I don't know.
What will you give the Abbey of Thelema?
3. I was actually thinking of giving it less, like 2.5, but yeah, 3. It just didn't do anything for me. I mean, I thought that it was interesting how it went over to the heavier chorus, I guess.
Yeah.
But like you said, it didn't go together. And I don't know. I just feel like the whole the beginning where he was singing is like na 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 na. It sounded like a really like, okay, I don't know how to sing or write a song, so this is like what I came up with, which is like really weird because he's better than that.
Yeah.
Like it sounded like a really basic like beginner songwriter thing, like trying to put a melody together and not knowing how to do it, and it's just like,
or maybe it was like a first pass.
It sounded really like
the first time you heard it at all, and you just start riffing to figure out where you're gonna go with it. And
yeah, like it sounded like a really beginner's type of like stab at like songwriting or something. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe it was supposed to be weird. I don't know. It sounded kind of unfinished and disjointed. I didn't like it all that much.
Yeah. You thought about it. I'm going to do it. I'm giving it a 2.5. I feel like it was. I was thinking the exact same thing. I can't bump it up. I can't bump it up to a 3. I think it's
I don't know.
Too, it's just like you said, too disjointed. To me, it's almost not even a filler track. It's we've talked about this before as we grow through the evolution of what albums are from the 60s. Now we're in the late 70s. We'll soon be in the 80s. If what would have been why have a 10th song on the album? Why not just make it a 9-song album? Like, I think this one could have been left off or fleshed out in a way that could have yielded 2 better songs from the kind of scraps of what they had here. So yeah, just not a favorite for me. All right. Well, hopefully with the last track on this album, he can get back in the game, because that is the title of this last track. Back in the game. Here we go. Every one of these songs I play, I feel like I recognize them, even though I haven't heard this album in so long.
I'm coming back from the fight and inside in the sewer. I started feeling again. I'm getting out of the rain. No more feeling ashamed. I'm getting back in the game. Oh, my friend, from the past, my friend. I'm looking back at the wayside.
Kind of cool. Give that little stop and then kick back in with the riff.
We got it moving again. I started feeling again. I'm getting out of the rain. I'm getting back in the game. I'm getting back in the game. They say it's never the same. I'm getting back.
All right, here we go.
It's funny because in the last song he threw in a bunch of screams at the end, almost he was trying to save it, but it was a little too late. But here it's working.
Yeah, now he's pulling out the stops. See, I don't know if I really like this either, him singing along with the guitar part.
Yeah.
Like, you know how I feel about that. I feel that's kind of like another, like, you know, songwriter 101 type of thing.
I love this part though.
Oh yeah.
Watchers of the game are wiser than they seem. Players in the game seem wiser than they are. With a little bit of love and what I see, you would know just a little bit of everything. It's just the same. I'm back in the game.
It sounds like it's building up to something.
Yeah, right. Picking up the pace there. That's nice. A little back and forth between the keys and the guitar is always welcome. I love that ending. It's just like crazy. The bass is going boom, 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 boom. It was all over the place. Back in the game. What do you think?
I'll give it 3.5. I think you know, he reeled me back in a little bit, but not all the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, the singing along with the guitar line thing, it's just like I found it kind of like, what's the word? I don't know,
Monotonous.
pedestrian, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of like, I don't know, do something else.
Yeah, I feel like that.
I don't know. I
it
also
always
thought that
seems-
like the
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
like lazy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it just gets, to me, it seems just a little monotonous. Like we've already heard that melody line. Do something different with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the last couple of songs were not felt like they weren't completely done,
Hmm.
or fleshed out like you had said before. I mean, it had some good energy to it. As and I mean the production like just left me wanting for heavier guitar, especially because the guitar had like its moments
Hmm.
in here, like, it broke off and it did its own thing, and playing the main like kind of riff, but it wasn't like it had no bite to it. It sounded like, and I mean, we're coming from a place where, the like you said, the keyboard player wrote pretty much all the songs. So of course it was going to be a real, keyboard, piano, organ heavy album. For some reason, the emphasis was really on the bass.
Yeah,
Um,
which is fine with me actually.
so yeah, but in terms of like, what I wanted from the guitar, it didn't always work. Or like when I was hoping for something, it didn't like come through 100%. So
Yeah.
production wise. So
Yep. I will. I am on board with you of the 3.5. Same thing. It didn't really quite. It starts off really strong with that Secret of the Dance. Fighting Man again is a highlight for me. Some other really good. So the first side I feel is really strong overall. The second side starts off strong, but I feel like again we're hit with another album that is just probably just longer than it needs to be. I mean, you could have cut two
yeah,
songs from this album, still had a really solid album. Uh, I don't know what I like we said, it's that kind of trend I think in this time and going into the 80s we'll see just trying to get longer and longer albums to fill up the sides, and as we get into the cassette and CD era, that unfortunately gets amplified even more with just shoving as much stuff on those albums as possible, and it's not always to the benefit.
mhm.
It's funny because the CD era, they start saying, "Oh, it's whatever 74 minutes, I think, whatever." So let's put 72 minutes worth of music. Or when they got the 80-minute CDs after that, let's put 80 minutes worth of music. That's a lot of Jesus Christ Superstar is a double album. That's 80 minutes. Um, that's like 80 minutes well
It's
spent
a lot of music.
and needed. It's a ton of music.
Yeah.
But when you start just doing song after song after song, that's a lot of music. But you have that same CD right next to it of whatever in rock or Machine Head or any of these albums that are 7 songs, 8 songs, and they they didn't. They're 35 minutes long, maybe taking up half or less of what the CD can hold, but it's kind of this quantity versus quality thing. Let's just jam more songs on there. And even with stuff like this, you've got this album and it's got 4 bonus tracks on it, which we'll cover some other time. Which for a special release, obviously that makes sense. You put bonus tracks on there. Maybe it's not something you listen to every time. That's fine, but a lot of the times it's not. It's just not needed if it's an original release. So
Yeah. I feel like you're right. This song could have contained probably 2 less songs. Like you probably could have cut off the last 2 songs, or I don't know, just any two. You know,
yep,
definitely the Abbey song.
yeah, probably could
Um,
have done without that.
but I mean, yeah, overall, it's like if this was supposed to be like a return to hard rock or whatever, I'd say it was like mildly successful.
Hmm.
Um, like there were a couple of like there were a few like there's a handful of like great songs on here. And then there's just like some that aren't as great. And I mean, I guess you have to kind of know that like, when Gillan is involved, and I mean he was one of the producers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, then yeah, and he's working with, certain musicians are left to his own devices, like we said before about like, say like Glenn Hughes and Play Me Out, he could just go whatever direction he wants. And it's quirky for sure. Um, it's definitely a lot less than the Ian Gillan band, which, if you're looking for overall like shorter songs, less twists and turns type of thing, then this is, more for that type of fan, but overall not as strong of an album as I had hoped or I had remembered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that being said, you know, the performances I think were good. Like, great band of musicians though, and some good songs for sure. So this gets a combined rating of 7.3 from the two of us, which falls squarely in the middle of Pace, Ashton and Lord, Malice in Wonderland, which basically gets the same rating, a couple of points lower. And Roger Glover Elements gets the same rating.
Which is funny.
So
I would
kind of
say I
it's
prefer
funny
both
that
of those albums, but
it's funny that it's that some of these albums like this one, it falls between two other Deep Purple projects.
mm-hmm.
You know, like it's interesting to see where some of these combined ratings wind up, because you're just like, oh yeah, it's kind of with other, almost like it's companion albums, it's with other solo albums. It's not like, oh look, it's right near, in rock or something.
Well, it's interesting that we both ranked this exactly the same, even though our song ratings were all over the place in regard to each other. We only agreed on three songs on the whole album. We had the same rating, but yet the album as a whole.
Right. I think I might have saved it from going a little lower by not giving the
Abbey of Thelema.
The Abbey of Thelema the little bit less. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, when you said it, I'm like, I probably should have changed my rating, but I feel like, but I'll stand by it, for the reasons of, liking certain parts of it. But
all right. Well, when this album came out, it was released in October. They said they promised it for September, but it looks like it came out in October of 1978. The tapes were sent to Japan and mixed there, and they said they were mixing until hours before it needed to be shipped. The two Ian Gillan band Budokan albums had done really well in Japan, so Gillan decided to capitalize on the success in Japan, and that's why it was released there. In October, they promoted the album with a tour. And back in the UK, like I said, the only way to get a copy of it was through a promoter. It's mentioned as a big change in direction for Ian Gillan from Ian Gillan Band, but I see it kind of this album to me feels like more of a bridge between them. It's along with Scarabus, it's kind of this progression from kind of transmogrifying. Like if you see the later Gillan stuff in the early 80s, it seems much more kind of straightforward rock. And I think they were still trying to kind of find their way on this album. They mostly they gigged pretty consistently after it was released. Blackmore famously joined them on stage in 1978 at the Rainbow, and that's when they had that little thing where Blackmore tried to get Gillan to join Rainbow, and Gillan tried to get Blackmore to join Ian Gillan Band, and of course they both refused, which was probably a good idea. In the Stargazer, Deep Purple Appreciation Society, issue number 18 in April of 1979, they reviewed the album. The review says this: "Eek, it's good. Right from the word go, it's clear that this is a new band and a new Gillan, or at least the old one revitalized. Back is the raw, rough, and ready sound which the IGB never had, and which Purple lost after Fireball." So I think anything after Fireball was a lost cause. That's really hardcore. The band haven't the technique or skill of Purple, but by keeping things simple and doing straightforward songs with a minimum of solos, they get away with it nicely. Compare this to Long Live or Trouble and see how dated they sound. And then there's a review also of the Marquee show in London where Blackmore joined Gillan on stage, which says Blackmore also spent Christmas in Britain, probably to check out vocalists. He did take the chance to sneak down to Gillan's opening date at the Marquee and join for an encore. Blackmore also asked Gillan to join Rainbow. Ian said no, but in return asked Blackmore to join his band. But Ritchie, according to Gillan, wants to start at the top and work from America, whereas Gillan wants to begin at the bottom and work his way up. Some of you were lucky enough to be at the marquee on the night in question. Gnash's teeth. We were at the front, crushed, waiting for an encore when the whole place erupted. It was Blackmore. He just walked out, smelt Steve Bird's armpit, plugged in and started. He didn't replace Bird, just joined him. He broke into Lucille. It was total bliss. Terry. So there you go. I don't know about sniffing his armpit, what that's supposed to mean, but I like it. So the drummer, Janaki, did not continue with Gillan after this. He went to work with Jerry Rafferty, and the new drummer, Pete Barnacle, joined the band. The band replaced Janaki with Mick Underwood and Bird with Bernie Torme. They got to work on the Mr. Universe album with the new lineup. So there you go. And this is another one of those kind of messy, sort of like Whitesnake, messy sort of things where they released Mr. Universe, but then there's the alternate version of Mr. Universe, which contains some of the songs from Gillan and some of this. It's just kind of a big mess. But the original album release of Mr. Universe, the next album, we will cover that at some time in the future. And that's that. That's Gillan. The first album, Gillan, or the Japanese album, or whatever you want to call it. Gillan. All right. Well, that's it, my friend. That's all we got to say about the Gillan album. And until next week, please be safe and socially distance.
Don't be sorry. Please be safe. Don't be sorry.
All right. Well, thank you, my friend. I will talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.